This is Ray Somberg, and it's February 7th, 2018. And I'd like to just start by saying one significant event that had to do with my two grandparents. One was Abe Goldstein, and Grandpa Goldstein was a wonderful man, and a huge Chicago Cubs and St. Louis Cardinal baseball fan, and so I grew up with those inklings. And when I was 10 years old in 1946, my grandfather took my brother Marlon and I. Marlon was 14 and I was 10, on a train to the 1946 World Series in St. Louis. And that was, of course, a tremendous thrill. And the real significance of that was that I talked to my children and my grandchildren about that, and I think it's had an influence on them to do special things with their children, and to create experiences that are just tremendous memories. My grandfather, on my father's side, Abe Somberg, who passed away when I was only 6, so I really never knew him, but he had a general store in Elk Creek, Nebraska, and when they decided to move to Omaha, the big city, they sold the store to Sam Reisman, who is now turned out to be the grandfather of my current wife, Susie. So that was quite a coincidence. My parents were Lou and Rosalind Somberg. My dad was born in Elk Creek, Nebraska. My mother in Centerville, Iowa. My dad was a fabulous father, and I'll talk a little bit later about being in business with him. But he was a great man, and I admired him tremendously. My mother was a wonderful mother. She treated my brother and I with unconditional love. One of her characteristics was she was a huge worrier, and when she ran out of things to worry about, she'd worry that she didn't have anything to worry about. But fortunately, my brother Marlon inherited that trait, and I didn't. An example of her worrying, we had bicycles, but she encouraged us not to ride on them because some kids fall and scuff up their knees. So that was an example of that. My mother had a brother, Herman Goldstein, who we were in business with, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And my father had a sister, Sarah Chesson, who lived in Lincoln, and Zerlene Barron lived in Sioux City, and half-sister Zerlene and half-sister Ruthie Krantz that lived in Lincoln. I have 3 children with my first wife, Suzanne Singer. Incredibly proud of all 3 of them for the life they lead, and especially the quality people that they have turned out to be. Each of my children, 2 boys and a girl, each of them are married to great people. None of the 3 of my children married Jewish spouses, but all of my 7 grandchildren were raised Jewish. I have 7 grandchildren. My father used to say all of his grandchildren were amazing, and I thought, well, that really can't be. What are the chances that they'd all be amazing? But Now I knew what he was talking about because all of my grandchildren are amazing. Um, and I have 4 step-grandchildren with my wife, Susie. Uh, we don't have any great-grandchildren yet, but our oldest grandson, Andrew, who lives in San Francisco, is getting married this August. So hopefully I can hang around long enough to have a great-grandchild. That would be a tremendous thrill. As far as my education is concerned, I started my education at Humpty Dumpty Nursery School when I was 3 years old. I didn't do really too well. I had to go to summer school one time to make up so I could graduate on time. I went there with Bob Cully and Nancy Farber at that time. Then I went to Dundee School and Central High School. At Central, I was on the National Honor Society. I was one of the original founders of RAIM, the Jewish fraternity, and then became president of that. I was on the Central High School's baseball team. Steve Rosenblatt last summer said that he thought that in one of the games I got a hit off Bob Gibson. And I said, well, I have absolutely no recollection of that at all. I thought Steve was making up a story. So anyway, that in the next week he went into the World Herald archives and sent me a copy of the box score of that, which when I guess I did. It probably was a wet day, and he probably hit a little. I probably hit a bunt, and Gibson probably slipped and fell down or something. Probably something like that. During my high school, I worked part-time at our Nadelson's, our ladies' ready-to-wear store, at the original store downtown, as what they used to call a floor walker, and I was 15 or 16 years old. When I graduated from Central, I went to my college career at the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, the Wharton School. Right now, in the last few years, it's so competitive. I'm sure I could not have gotten in there now, but I did then. One of the highlights of my college days was I was in the ZBT fraternity, and that was a great experience. I ended up being the president my senior year, and I have a number of almost lifetime of friends from that. There were five of us that were especially close, and about 5 or 6 years ago, the 5 of us with our spouses went on a trip to France, excuse me, and stayed together, and it was just for about 10 days, and it was just fantastic. And in the next year and a half after that trip, one of them passed away and 2 of them got cancer. So that got to me in a big way, and I I created a bucket list, which I've acted on 6 or 7 times since then. But my closest friend met in 1954 when we were freshmen. We were fraternity brothers. 1 year we roomed together, and when I got married right after graduation from college in 1958, I asked him to be in my wedding, and he came from Birmingham, Alabama, his home, and was in the wedding, and we fixed him up with bunny rabbits, and 2 or 3 years later they got married, and they've been married for 54 years. So I consider that one of my greatest accomplishments in life. The education I got there was a very good one. I'm not sure that if I had to do it over again, I would have gone there, because I knew I was 98% sure I was going to go into the family business. I thought that my father, feeling that I came from a nice family, would probably hire me. And so I think I got into Cornell, and I think I probably would have gone there and got a more liberal arts education. But but college was a great experience. I loved it. During my junior and senior year, I went on a trip with my closest friend at that time, Dick Frank, and for 8 weeks, Israel and many other countries. And I then graduated in June of 1950. After graduating from college in 1958, I enlisted in the Nebraska National Guard. At that time, they had a 6-month program, and one of the events that happened during the 2 months that I was stationed in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, in the middle of the winter, outside all day, every day. It was miserable. But one of the things was the learning how to fire M1 rifles. And at that time, they did absolutely nothing to protect your hearing. And one weekend, I was completely deaf. And I went to the doctor, and he said, you had some damage. In a few days, the hearing will come back. But when you're older, you'll have some hearing problems because you did have some damage. And as a result, the last 5 or 6 years, I wear hearing aids. They're very helpful, but it's a problem. After getting back from the 6-month program, I was in the reserves, but went to work at Nadelson's, our clothing store. At that time, we had one store downtown, 1517 Douglas. In 1960, we opened our first branch store, our second store, at the Crossroads Shopping Center, and I was the manager of the store at that time, and also a buyer. One of the first trip that I took, and I was gone for a week, I thought that, well, the amount of business we do in the store would probably go down significantly with my not being there. And when I got back, I realized that everything had went just fine, and the business was better, and so that was a good, humbling experience for me to have. I was incredibly conscientious on the first couple trips, to a point where I worked all day, after dinner, everything, and I just worked myself into a tizzy. And both times after the first 2 trips, I was sick at home for a couple days. I learned a lesson there. It was pretty bad. What I learned from my father about the clothing business, I learned more in 6 months than I did in 4 years in college. My dad was a tremendous teacher. I remember something that has stuck with me through the years, where I would come into his office and say, I think we need to buy X number or more, or whatever it was. And this happened the first 5 or 6 times, where he'd ask questions about it, and I didn't have all of the information I needed to make a good decision on whether to buy something or not, or what the quantities would be. And he would say, you don't have all the facts. When you have the facts, come back and we'll talk about it. We'll say, I think we need to buy X number or more, or whatever it was. And this happened the first 5 or 6 times, where he'd ask questions about it, and I didn't have all of the information I needed to make a good decision on whether to buy something or not, or what the quantities would be. And he would say, you don't have all the facts. When you have the facts, come back and we'll talk about it, but we're not going to talk about it until you have all the facts. So that was a very valuable learning experience for me. He did created a philosophy or a culture which I think was incredibly unique. We would go to lunch almost every day and talk about whatever issues there were. And there were three of us, and I would say probably 80 or 90% of the time we agreed, but not always. And when I was 25, I'd been in the business for 3.5 years or so, and Marlon would be 29, and he was in the business maybe 7 or 7.5 years. My dad created a policy whereby anytime the three of us didn't agree, we would each have one vote, which meant that if he was more conservative, naturally, most naturally, that as far as age, and we were younger and more aggressive, that if Marlon and I wanted to do something and he thought it was a mistake, we could do it. And he's the one that set that policy up. So that became, that's pretty darn unique, especially since we were as young as we were. So that helped significantly when it came time to, well, a number of areas where it was significant. Probably the most was expansion, where he would have been much more conservative than we were. I was in business with my dad and my brother for 31 years, which was really a blessing. We got along tremendously. We didn't always agree, but we had great respect for each other, and it was just an experience that I always cherished. I was in business with my brother and my father for 31 years. The first 28 of the 31 were fun, very enjoyable, profitable every single year, but the last 3 were not. Things went downhill pretty quickly. Every business has competition, but more and more large centers like Westroads and Southroads and the others, and more strip centers, and so everybody was trying to maintain their market share, and there was much more sales going on, and it was very hard to sell merchandise at a regular price. And so we decided we didn't see that it would change for the better, and so we closed our stores in 1990 and 91. And after I was hoping during the maybe 10 years or so before we closed the stores that maybe I so enjoyed my experience with my brother and my father that maybe one or more of my kids would come into the business. But in the latter years, things were going, the last 3 years, so poorly, I did not want them to come into the business, of course, and then there was no business to come into, but I would have never tried to influence them to do that, but thought for a while that it'd be nice if it was at least available, but then of course it wasn't. We were in business with my uncle, my mother's brother, Herman Goldstein. The 3 of us ran Nadelson's, and Herman Goldstein ran and his son-in-laws ran Goldstein Chapman's. The two organizations were mutually owned but independently operated. So we had a mixed success with that, and by that I mean that in the later years, Nadelson's was contributing about 95% of the profits of the two companies together, and that doesn't bode well for harmony, and of which there was not. And so we ended up buying them out. I thought I was going to, when I was younger, have one career my whole life, and because of closing the stores, I ended up with 5. After Nadelson's was closed, I got a job at the Omaha Chamber of Commerce as the vice president of small business. I started the Buy the Big O campaign, trying to influence companies in Omaha to do business with other local companies to help the whole economy. I was involved heavily in the Big O show, which when I got there, they had done it 1 year and had 130 people attend, and after a number of years, we had an attendance of 7,000. At the chamber, one day, somebody said, you ought to start a Tips Club program here. And I said, what is a Tips Club? And they explained to me what it was. I did some research. I went to Austin, Texas, and Indianapolis, where the chambers were heavily involved in Tips Clubs. They're groups of non-competing business people that meet once a week and exchange tips, leads, referrals, with the idea of people being able to do more business by this information they get. I started one group located at the chamber. It was successful, and I started another group each of the next 7 years. So I had, after 8 years, I had 8 groups, which was 400 meetings a year, and that was just part of what I did at the chamber. And I found out that while all this was happening, I was getting older, and so it got the clubs and the other things that I was doing was too much, and I left the chamber. One of the people after I left said, "Are you going to continue on with this club idea, or are you going to just drop it?" And I hadn't really thought much about it, so I took 4 or 5 of the presidents of each of the clubs to lunch one day and talked about it. And out of that luncheon came 2 ideas. One decision, one idea. The decision was, I think there were 5 of them. 4 of them said I should carry on with it, and 1 said I shouldn't. So I did. And the other suggestion was, instead of doing it on tips clubs, which are 80%, 75, 80, 85% salespeople, do it on an executive basis where they're owners of companies, presidents of companies, senior management only. And I started, I had 2 tips clubs and 2 that I called the Omaha Executive Clubs. So I ended up with 4 on my own. I sold the 2 tips clubs, and so now, even though I retired from the First Responders Foundation, which I'll talk about in a minute, at the end of 2017, I still have the 2 executive clubs. They have about 25 members in each club, and one meets at Happy Hollow Country Club, the other one meets at Oak Hills Country Club. One's been in existence for 13 years and the other 12 years. Then during my 4th career, was during that time, I worked for 4 years for the Fremont National Bank, marketing, not in Fremont, but in Omaha, loans, and that was quite successful. While all this was going on, I was involved in the downtown Rotary Club that was the largest Rotary Club of the 8 or 9 in Omaha, and became president in 2002, 2003. And a very fortunate thing happened during that period of time. I met Susie Sofer, and we went together for 6 years, and in this October we'll be married for 24. My fifth and final career started in May of 2008 when my close friend Jerry Hoberman and I had lunch. And Jerry, we started talking around about 9/11 and the visual that we all have of the planes going in the Twin Towers in New York, and people rushing out of the buildings in a panic just trying to survive, and 3,000 did not. And while people were rushing out of the building, firefighters and police officers were rushing into the buildings. And on that horrific day, 350 firefighters and 60 police officers lost their lives, and many were injured. And of course, it was an international event, and everybody knew about 9/11. And probably, or most likely, the appreciation people around the world felt for police and fire at that time probably was at an all-time high. The phrase is, they put their lives on the line for us, but we saw them doing it, and 350 firefighters and 60 police officers lost their lives on one day. And Jerry's connection to this was he had a neighbor at that time that was a battalion chief in the fire department. Okay, and so Jerry said to me, he said he would like to do something to show appreciation to firefighters. At that time, it was just firefighters, because they're not appreciated near to the extent that they should be. Jerry said that. He says, and I want to do something, I don't know what it is, but I want to do something in this area. And he said to me, I'll never forget, he said, take a day, take a week, take a month, think about it, don't jump on it, think about it, and get back to me about whether you'd like to have the two of us work on this project. And I said, Jerry, I don't need to think about it at all. Yes, let's work on it right now. So we started this with firefighters. We set up a 501c3, a nonprofit, and soon after we decided to get going on this, somebody said, well, are you going to include the police department, police people? And we said, well, we would consider that. And we went to Jerry's friend, neighbor, and a couple other firefighters and said, what would you think if we included police officers in this? And the answer was, absolutely, there are brothers in blue. So we became the only organization in Omaha that services both police and fire. And so I was 72 years old at that time, and so this became my fifth career. At that time we started, we had no idea what would become of it and what we would achieve or not achieve. We had no idea. We just had a desire to show appreciation to these people that we felt were grossly underappreciated. We set up a small board of directors, and our first big event was a firefighter and police appreciation day in Omaha, June 10th, 2010. On this one day, we had people on the morning drive time from 6:30 to 8:30 on the 50 most traveled street corners in the city with signs saying, honk your horn, turn your lights on, it's Firefighter Police Appreciation Day. While we were having lunch it was then the Quest Center, now it's CenturyLink. I'll get back to that in a minute. But while we were there, we had volunteers that served 900 lunches at the 40 different police and fire locations around the city. Whoever was on duty at lunchtime on that day, just to say thank you. We appreciate what you do for us. After the luncheon at the Quest Center, in the parking lot there, we had police and fire demonstrations, the horse patrol, the canine patrol. They had a robot. They had a little house tiny house that they put on fire and showed how to put it out. Uh, they had somebody not really that was caught in a car, and the jaws of life got him out of the car. The helicopter flew in. The Kiewit Foundation bussed in 2,000 kids from the different agencies around the community for this. Most of the audience was children. That night, this is all on one day, that night we had a concert fun night at Stinson Park in the Exarban property for the families of the police officers and the firefighters, not open to the public. The police estimated there were between 2,700 and 3,000 people there. We had tons of kids. We had face painting for the kids, bouncies. We had the Creighton basketball team was there to help the kids. Free, everything was free. Free T-shirts, a band on the stage, and fireworks at the end of the evening. All that being said, the main event was the luncheon at the Quest Center. The mayor was there, the governor was there, J.B. Milliken, who was the chancellor at the university, was there, and we were sold out at 1,600 people, and we raised $645,000. It took us about 1 year and 3 quarters to put that all together. From the proceeds of we had major expenses, of course, but from the proceeds of that event, we were able to donate to the 2 departments in critically needed equipment designated by the 2 chiefs, $440,000 worth of equipment. As we went on past 2010, some of the highlights are we have the last 4 years, a minute of silence at Memorial Park on the morning of 9/11 to commemorate and out of respect for those that passed on 9/11, including over 400 first responders. We have a 9/11 Memorial Benefit, a fundraiser, which is our annual signature event. When Carrie Orozco, who was the first woman police officer ever killed in the line of duty here, which was on May 20th, 2015, I believe. She had a baby who was born prematurely and was in the hospital, and she was within hours of taking a leave and picking up her baby at the hospital and taking the baby home, baby girl, and she and a couple other officers were issuing a warrant to a criminal, and the fellow that took a shot and hit her, and she died. And many organizations did wonderful things for the family, the kids, scholarships and all. We were asked to raise money for Carrie's causes. She was very involved in the community besides her police work. And what we did is we had Support Blue t-shirts made and Carry On t-shirts made. And over a period of about 6 or 7 months, we sold over 12,000 t-shirts. And I worked with the representative of the family, and they designated where the proceeds would go, which is proper. That's who should have designated. And we had a press conference at the Boys and Girls Club, and I handed out checks to 7 different organizations that Carrie was involved in, totaling $120,000. Some other highlights of my 9 years with the First Responders Foundation. In 2015, we received the Heartland Red Cross, their Commitment to Community Award, and that was presented to our foundation. And the thrill of that was that all three of my kids flew in for that ceremony. We have provided, one of our programs was to raise money for smoke and carbon monoxide detectors to be put in the people's homes in the low-income areas, where the last thing they would spend money on would be something like this. And the alarm, the smoke and carbon monoxide alarm, is free because we raise the money. The fire department installs them free, and certainly has saved lives, and they've installed over 9,000 of them. We had last year a Guns and Hoses event, which is boxing between firefighters and police officers, and that was, other than the event in 2010, our biggest fundraiser, where we netted, there was 3,900 people at the event, and we raised $116,000. We've donated to the two departments during this time a little over $1,500,000. I retired at the end of 2017, which is just 5 weeks ago. The board chairman, Chuck Cederstrom, when he told me about what was going to happen each quarter of 2017 in the succession planning program, he said, in the fourth quarter, we'll have an event to thank Ray for what he's done. And he said, I'm going to find 3 or 4 of the biggest liars I can find to say something nice about you. So anyway, he was successful in doing that. This event was on a Thursday night, October 25th, last year, 2017. The chiefs of the two police and fire department was there, and the mayor was there. The two chiefs presented me with an appreciation plaque from also an American flag, which the police chief says is one of the highest honors they can give to anybody other than outside the department. The mayor read a proclamation, and in that proclamation, it designated October 25th of 2017 Ray Somberg Appreciation Day, which is very nice. And she also presented me with the key to the city. One of the really thrilling things for me at this appreciation event, retirement event, was that my son Ken was able to fly in from New Jersey for it. So that was very, very special. I said in my acceptance of these different things that were presented to me, one of the things I said was that I had said that talking to my wife Susie a couple of weeks before this event, and I said to her, looking back these 9 years, can you imagine that in your wildest dreams that the different things that have been accomplished, and now I'm retiring, and the board is having this retirement event for me. I mean, could you imagine in your wildest dreams back then that this all could have happened? And Susie said to me, she said, you're never in my wildest dreams. That went over pretty well. So now I'm in my 5th or 6th week of retirement. I still have my 2 executive clubs. I'm staying on the board of the foundation and on the executive committee, but I'll be still involved, but not anywhere near to the extent that I was. I want to spend more time with Susie, travel, play more golf, reading friends, and just trying to learn how to relax. That's my story.